Good morning. Welcome everybody to our second small business and permitting workshop. We're here this morning, of course, to prepare for the Super Bowl. We want to make sure you guys have the information that you need as small business owners here in downtown. First things first, we have a video for you. Yeah, so I love that video. I think it just really is a great reminder of what the Super Bowl is and what it does for Phoenix. I don't know how many of you were down here in 2015 when the Super Bowl was last hosted here in downtown, but it brings so many people down here. It's a great opportunity for our businesses, and there's some stuff that you need to be thinking about, and you should be thinking about it now if you want to do something kind of different outside your normal business practice. So first, a little bit about who we are. So I'm Zandy Keating. I'm with the City of Phoenix Economic Development Department. We're hosting this today in conjunction with Downtown Phoenix, Inc., as well as the Arizona Super Bowl Host Committee. Like I said, to make sure that you guys have what you need. We have a series of presentations that we're going to give about a number of different topics this morning, and then we're going to have a question and answer session immediately following that sort of presentation. We're going to bring all our panelists up here for a question and answer session. Get great opportunity to ask any other oddball questions that we're just not thinking about. First, I'm going to hand it over to Rami Lofgren to talk a little bit about some of the great events. There's a lot of things that are going to be happening here in downtown. There's some other things in other parts of the valley too, but some of the real big stuff is going to be right here in downtown. So Rami Lofgren is with the Arizona Super Bowl Host Committee, and I'm going to pass it over to her for a moment.
Hi everybody, my name is Rami Lofgren. Like Zandon said, I'm with the host committee. I'm our head of marketing. And then that's Ali Fassetti in the back if you want to give a wave. She's on the team as well on the marketing side. So earlier this week, hopefully you saw some of it in the news, we had a press conference that announced publicly all of the events that are happening. Well, I shouldn't say all, there are more to come, but many of the events for Super Bowl week. So specific to Phoenix, the things to look forward to are NFL Honors. So that's really an award show for the players. That's typically televised on a network station. This year it'll be NBC, but that'll be the Thursday prior to Super Bowl, and that'll be at Symphony Hall. There is the Bud Light Super Bowl Music Festival. That'll be at Footprint Center, and that is the 9th through the 11th of February. And those are these A-list acts. So, before they've had, Gwen Stefani and some others in previous Super Bowl music fests. The big one here, Super Bowl Experience at Phoenix Convention Center. That is the weekend prior to Super Bowl, February 4th through 5th, and also then the week of, the 9th through the 11th. We have our Super Bowl Experience, and I say our, this is a host committee puts this one on, Super Bowl Experience at Hance Park. And that's the multi-day festival that you all have been hearing quite a bit about. That will be the 9th through the 11th. And then also we announced on Monday that there will be the official Super Bowl watch party at Hance Park on that Sunday. So this is a first ever, the first time a Super Bowl host city has been able to host an official watch party that's open to the public and free, so we're super excited about that. And then tickets for the events that do require a ticket, again, Super Bowl Experience at Hance Park will be free, but for all the others that I mentioned will be on sale December 17th, which is 57 days from Super Bowl, so. Anybody have questions on any of those events? Get them all marked on the calendar? And if you forget any or you need to reference, you can always visit azsuperbowl.com, our website. There's an events tab and everything's listed. So if you need to reference that or check back on anything.
All right, thank you, Ramey. Next, so I'll tell you a little bit about what our agenda looks like today. So of course we're obviously doing the introduction right now, but we're first going to talk about clean zone. That's a concept I know probably all of you have heard about. So we'll kind of talk about what those regulations look like, what the boundaries are, what does all that mean. Then we're going to get into temporary signage. We have quite a bit of information about, the permitting process for that, what kind of signs need permits, that sort of thing. And then we're going to get more into the event stuff. So permits, licensing, if you're doing something temporary and, a temporary space indoors or outdoors, where are those parameters for, what you should really be looking at. Like I said, we are going to have all the panelists up here at the end to do a question and answer session. So it's going to be easier if we hold off our questions until that point. But we'll go ahead and dive into the presentation here. So first, I'd like to bring up Jason Blakely with the Planning and Development Department to talk about Clean Zone.
All right, thank you, Xana. Appreciate it. As Xana mentioned, my name is Jason Blakely. I'm an Assistant Director in the Planning and Development Department, overseeing our Plan Review and Inspections Group. But today, I am here to talk a little bit about the Clean Zone. I don't know if any of you were like me when I first heard the term. I thought it was like we're going to roll up our sleeves and do a deep clean of downtown Phoenix. That's not necessarily what we're talking about when it comes to a major civic event like the Super Bowl. I can guarantee you, though, that the City of Phoenix, all of our community partners, Downtown Phoenix, Inc., Arizona Super Bowl Host Committee will have downtown looking spotless as we have many visitors coming down to the various events that Ramey discussed earlier. So what exactly is the Clean Zone? In simple terms, it's a geographically defined area that provides protection to the NFL, the Arizona Super Bowl Host Committee, against any unauthorized advertising, temporary signs, and vending. Why do we need it? Obviously, the NFL sponsors are making a huge financial commitment to be one of those designated sponsors, and we need to provide that protection to those sponsors in the downtown area where a lot of the Super Bowl events are happening. This is also a huge economic impact to our local economy, so we want to make sure that we're being a good partner with the NFL and the host committee as well. It's also protection for consumers. We don't want any of our consumers out there getting any unauthorized merchandise, and we're keeping the Super Bowl experience safe for everybody. We'll have, definitely going to have enhanced presence the weeks leading up to the Super Bowl and even a few days after the Super Bowl, enhanced police presence, fire, planning and development inspectors, neighborhood services inspectors as well. So where is the Clean Zone, you guys might be asking? It's pretty simple. We're going from McDowell down to Lincoln and then 7th Ave to 7th Street. We want a defined area that's going to capture where the majority of the events are going to be. Hance Park, Footprint Center, the Convention Center, any of the thoroughfares coming into the downtown area, we want to make sure we have those protections in place. I can tell you this area started out to be a lot larger than this, but after some discussion, community outreach, we decided to modify the boundaries to a more condensed area. All right, so what else do you need to know about the Clean Zone? It was a City Council approved resolution, so it did go through a formal council adoption and process. It's effective the 3-week period before the Super Bowl, which is February 12th, 2023, and 1 week after. Any temporary sign requests that you guys are thinking about will need NFL and Arizona Super Bowl Host Committee approval, in addition to a City of Phoenix permit. And we'll have David Williams up here in a little bit talking about temporary signs and providing you all the information you need regarding those. There's no impact to any existing permitted permanent signs. So if you have a wall sign for your business advertising your place of business that's been permitted by the City of Phoenix, there's no impact to that. Any ground signs, anything along those lines wouldn't be an impact. It's just specifically related to temporary signs, banners, balloons, building wraps, things of that sort. As I mentioned, we will have enhanced enforcement during this period, so we're going to have boots on the ground. We will be canvassing the downtown area, looking for any violations, but we're also going to be responding on a complaint-related basis. Not saying that you need to turn in all your friends, but if we do get complaints, we will be out there. And when we get complaints and we go out and enforce in terms of signs, inspections, Dave will talk a little bit more about it, but it's going to be more about education and requests to remove, not necessarily coming down with a hard hammer. And the last item, it should go without saying, but there's no unauthorized use of the NFL logo, Super Bowl host committee logo. So if you guys are thinking about any of that, you definitely want to be having those conversations with our sign team and then also the NFL host committee as well. So I do appreciate you guys' time this morning. I thank you guys for all showing up. Great turnout this morning. We have a ton of information coming. And as Anna said, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jason. Now we're going to move on to the most exciting topic of today, talking about signage. Definitely something that all businesses need to know about. So a lot of great information here. David Williams is the city's sign section supervisor, and we'll jump into that.
Thank you, Zandon. Good morning, Arizona. How are we doing today? I'm David Williams, AICP, as you can see on the slide up front. I'm a planner by training, and most of my experience, I'm now the sign master in Phoenix. But AICP, does anybody know what that means, that registration? It means any idiot can plan. So it's actually American Institute of Certified Planners. This opening slide, too, that Sophia put together for us is interesting, too, in terms of the scale of signs. For most of us, our small businesses, and I ran my own small business for 10 years, a sign is something that's 2 by 3 feet or 4 by 8 feet. Not a huge thing, but in Phoenix, we've even turned buildings into signs. As you can see, these are temporary signs, and that's what we're talking about today, that are vinyl, what are called building wraps. And they are expensive, and they do generate a lot of revenue. We transform a building into a giant sign. So it's kind of a phenomenon that we see in not too many cities, but it's a real opportunity for advertising and the economy. Okay, so what are we talking about today? Again, we're talking about temporary signs only, not permanent ones. Temporary signs include things like banners, flags, window signs, building wraps, as you just saw, and there's other things like pennants that are also temporary signs. Some people wonder about what is a sign and what isn't a sign, and that can be a good question. So remember, anything that has text, an image, or a logo, or artwork that promotes a business or a service that's provided, that is considered a sign under the adopted codes in the city of Phoenix, and we need permits for those. What we're not talking about today, again, is permanent signs like your tenant signs, building identification, building ID, or ground or monument signs. Just temporary signs today. Okay, so when is a sign permit needed? So almost always, if you operate a business and you have signs that are visible from the public street, the public realm, those require permits. The best thing to do if you're not sure, just simply contact us and give us a call. Here's our phone number and our email. We will respond in 24 hours or less and help you through whatever questions you might have, provide information. We, again, require a permit for any type of commercial sign, whether it's temporary or permanent. Okay, so now I've told you need to have a permit. How do you get it? How hard is that to do? We try to make it as simple as possible. We know it's, permitting and city requirements can be daunting at times, so we're there to help, and if it is overwhelming you, call us and talk to us so we can provide customer service for you. But you get a sign permit by completing an application, and you have to prepare a drawing showing where on the front of your building or your location the sign is going to be located. You submit that completed application and drawings to the Planning and Development Department, and there is a required fee for temporary signs. There's no fee to submit and have us review it, but if you want the permit issued, the fee is $150. It'll take us generally about 5 business days or less to get you a permit, and right now the Super Bowl host committee is doing a great job, thank you. And they also are reviewing during this period, starting November 1st, their approval is required for temporary signs. So we also route that application over to the host committee to have them give it a quick check, and they've been sending them back as little as a couple hours to us. So it's not causing a delay, it's just an additional step that we're doing right now. I've got some handouts, be happy to share with you later today, permit applications and instructions and information sheets regarding signs. How do you submit your permit? Well, if you want to be most efficient with your time, we offer online permit submittal. If you're more civically obsessed and you really want to come to City Hall, you can make an appointment and come down to City Hall and submit your application that way. Okay, so what's not allowed in terms of temporary signs? So, you know, we don't have signs without a permit. Some of you may have signs up without permits. I urge you to come get them. We will not penalize you for that. If we do an inspection and we find signs without permits, we will ask those to be removed. Sometimes there is a penalty fee for putting up signs without permits. But if you come in voluntarily, say, I want to keep this sign up, we'll work with you. There's no real penalties for that. There's some other things in terms of placement of signs that's important, mainly for public safety, and that's about not attaching signs to railings, other safety devices for pedestrians, fences, or pedestrian barriers, placing signs out in the street right away, which is off private property into the public property. That's not allowed, so we do see them sometimes put on light poles and street signs, but transit stops and things like that. Other things that are no-nos, during the event, during the week of the Super Bowl, competing companies who are not officially part of the NFL membership or part of their sponsor group and approved vendors will bring in things like tables, chairs, umbrellas that have their logo on it for non-sanctioned products. And they'll give them to you as businesses. Say, hey, please use these umbrellas on your patio. They've done that in the past, so beware of that. Again, those are signs when that umbrella's got, you know, some cola logo on there or some truck or vehicle on it. They'll try to woo you with freebies. So beware of that. Also, in terms of placing your signs, beware of great ideas that pop into your head at the last minute, like, I'll put the sign up on the roof because everybody will see it there. Well, that's never allowed in the city of Phoenix. Covering a doorway or anyway blocking access into a building with sign, that's a no-no. And spanning things like columns and posts if you have a porch, because those are visible public realm spaces, and for public safety, we want to keep that visibility open. Okay, so sign regulation enforcement. You know, normally we are complaint-driven when it comes to sign enforcement. But during this event, we are not complaint-driven. We are actually proactive, and we will be out in the clean zone that Jason showed you a few minutes ago, doing sweeps through that area, you know, looking for these non-sanctioned signs, as we're required to do in our agreement with the NFL and what the city councils has asked us to do. So we will be proactively enforcing sign regulations with periodic inspections. There are penalties for not complying, such as citations and fines. However, we seldom resort to that. We just work with you or work with the person to have the sign removed. We'll have the inspector remain on site, get the sign removed, no fines or penalties, and we move on with our day. But we will be out there looking around, and we'll be starting that proactive enforcement in the middle of January. So where do you get more information? So again, contact the Planning and Development Department. The sign section has its own dedicated phone line. We have our own email just for signs. We also have our own webpage at the department's webpage. So I've got informational handouts, happy to answer questions later. Thank you very much for taking your time to come down today and learn about the information on this major event. We're really a lucky community to be having a Super Bowl. As you know, it's a super competitive environment across the country to bring these events in. So Phoenix has done a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So next up, we're going to start talking about those event permits and licenses, the various items with that. We have the Planning and Development Department. Finance Department, Fire Department, as well as Maricopa County, all here with a piece of this presentation. So we're going to start off with Tricia Gomes of the Planning and Development Department to talk about temporary uses and extension of premise.
Thank you, Zandon. Good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Tricia Gomes. I'm with the Planning and Development Department, the zoning administrator. My section takes care of temporary uses and also extension of premise. So we'll start with the extension of premise. So anyone that wants to extend their existing liquor license outside of their existing premise area would come to the city of Phoenix. Ultimately, you're going to be approved by the state, but the city, our section is going to review that on behalf of the city. And looking to make sure your zoning allows it. Do you need any additional approvals, such as what we refer to as ATEPs, which is administrative temporary use permits, or temporary use permits, which is a little bit more involved with the public hearing process, which I'll talk a little bit more later. You can submit these. With COVID, it's changed quite a few things. You used to come up to the zoning counter, drop off your paper. We'll review the information, route it to the police department. They'll review, do their comments. Oftentimes, they're contacting you directly to get specifics about the event and how you're maintaining and the liquor and all that enforcement. And then we would sign off and you'd come pick that up. With COVID, it's been made available to send it to us directly via email. Also, the state provides their forms online and no longer have the notarized affidavit, so has made things a little bit more convenient. You're welcome to come down to City Hall and drop off your documents. The same process would happen, but you're welcome to send it directly to us at our zoning@Phoenix.gov mailbox. We do ask that you give about an 8-week time frame. As I mentioned, we're taking it in as city staff. We're going to send that over to the police department. They have to do their review. We get it back. And then we will send that to you. So give yourself about 2 months for that process. All right, so administrative temporary use permits. These are a process that staff can review and approve without going through additional public hearings. Often these fall under civic events, so any event that may be associated with the Super Bowl and approved, obviously, is going to fall under that. Or when you're doing your temporary extensions, since you don't maybe have that area covered, you're going to get a temporary or administrative temporary use permit. We asked for about a 15-day processing time on that. Like I said, we've also accepting these via email as well. And there's a variety of information that we ask for. Basically, it's going to be your exhibit of where your area is going to be, your exits, things like that. And then we also have temporary use permits. This is what's going to require going through a public hearing. And often in the downtown area, a temporary parking lot is automatically, if you had a vacant lot or maybe you're not using it currently and want to use it as a temporary parking lot, that would require a use permit through the public hearing process. Or if you're doing outdoor amplified music on maybe hours outside of the permitted, which is typically the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So anything kind of the Monday through Thursday may generate the need for the temporary use permit. Temporary use permit applications, it's about an 8-week processing time on that as well. So when you come to the counter to submit your application, from the day you file to about the time you get the hearing, it's an 8-week process. There is notification that you'll send out to your property owners, and neighborhood associations will hold a hearing. And then generally the hearing officer will make a final decision at that hearing. An important note on this, zoning adjustment applications, so use permit applications, are taken only in person and only by appointment, while City Hall is appointment only. Please let us know if you can always reach out to us. This is our contact information. We do have a planner line, which we do have a planner on staff all day long answering various questions. We also have our general mailbox, zoning@Phoenix.gov, to ask us any questions that may come up as well. And then we also have our information on the city's website. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trish. So next up, we're gonna start talking about special events, liquor, license, and vending. We have Leah Swanton here from the City Clerk Department.
Thank you, Zandon. So the portion I'm going to cover today is including special event liquor license as well as street and mobile vending. And then right after me will be finance, and they'll be discussing sidewalk vending. So special event liquor license. First, I want to point out it's important that your business, if you intend to sell or deal in spirituous liquors, you first must procure a liquor license. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with a variety of different liquor licenses, and some of you may already have one. The most common types are a Series 6 bar, a Series 7 beer and wine, a Series 9 retail, but the most common of all is a Series 12 restaurant. And that's probably the one that most of you are familiar with and have frequented yourself. But the series I'm going to focus on today related to kind of Super Bowl is the Series 15. The Series 15 liquor license, special event liquor license rather, it's temporary in nature and it's not permanent like some of these other ones I just mentioned. It only lasts the days of the event. So if you're intending to hold some sort of special event, during this time frame or any time throughout the year or in the next, upcoming years, you'll want to consider this and understand that in these cases, if you're intending on providing alcohol at your event, that you would need a special event liquor license. So the next question you may have is, to drill down a little bit more is like, what are those little trigger points that would require that I actually have a special event liquor license? Because as you might be thinking, if you were to be holding like a wedding for yourself, for example, and it's a private invite-only kind of list and you're serving alcohol, that would not require a special event liquor license. So what we're talking about here is includes some of these triggers that are up on this slide. So if you have a ticketed event, there may be a cash bar or charge bar, a membership fee, you're collecting donations, like donated alcohol, and you're reselling that alcohol at the event, or if you're giving away alcohol. So if you have any specific questions, because this can kind of be a slight nuance area, feel free to kind of reach out to our staff or contact me, and I can kind of walk you through those key questions so we can really drill down to find out whether or not it's required. And so who is eligible to apply? Not everybody. It's these three main ones on the slide here. A government entity is eligible to apply for a special event liquor license, a political party or campaign, and lastly, a nonprofit entity. That nonprofit entity needs to be organized as a nonprofit entity in Arizona. So, they need to be acknowledged in the Arizona Corporation Commission and pursuant to the laws of Arizona under Section 501 of the IRS. The most common applicants that we receive for special event liquor licenses are these nonprofit agencies. They need to be in good standing with Arizona Corporation Commission, and they must be able to show proof of nonprofit status with the IRS. An important thing to note is any of these eligible entities needs to take responsibility for the event. So part of the information and documents that need to be provided as part of the overall application do include like liability, insurance, different sorts of things, because whoever is the applicant is actually the one that is held responsible for anything that might take place. And so here's a good depiction of what the process looks like. The process actually starts with the City of Phoenix. So if you're familiar with like a regular liquor license, that actually starts with the state at the Department Liquor License and Control. And then it comes to the city for a recommendation. Special event is different in the sense that it comes to the city first, and you must have city approval, and then it gets forwarded to the state afterwards. So we recommend applying early. We recommend 90 days prior to the event is ideal. There is a charge fee for if you submit in a shorter time frame. But the process includes 4 primary steps. And you can see the steps up there. You start off by applying at the City of Phoenix. You're going to be submitting your application as well as the state application. You're also going to be providing different items that are on the applicant checklist. You'd pay your fee, and then you move on to the review process. The City of Phoenix, we immediately start reviewing the application submittal. There's also a review process by other departments, which includes police, planning and development, and the fire department. All of those different departments, they make their review, they submit their recommendation to License Services, and then License Services provides an overall recommendation to Mayor and City Council. It's scheduled onto a formal agenda to be heard, and then from there, it's either approved or denied. For the most part, we're rooting for you and hoping it gets approved, and once it's approved by Mayor and Council, it will be forwarded onto the state. So as you can see, there's several processes involved, which is kind of why we request you submit it 90 days in advance. We can move a little faster, and we're always rooting for you and hoping to get that through as fast as possible, but just to make sure and ensure that you have that approval prior to your event, 90 days is kind of what we're recommending. And like some of the other presenters also mentioned, we have a team of staff in License Services that are here to help you. We have staff that are answering the phone. This phone number is dedicated solely to all of our licenses that we issue. You can call that number at 602-262-4638, or we also have a dedicated email as well. So please feel free to contact us. You can either schedule an appointment and come and meet with our staff in person, or we could talk to you over the phone or via email. Next, I'm going to move on to our street vending. The first thing I want to point out that many of you may be familiar with, because I know a lot of you are business owners, is that the City of Phoenix does not have or issue a general business license. Unlike there's other cities throughout the valley that may actually require that, but the City of Phoenix is not one of those. So the only activities that are actually regulated are the ones that require a license, and this includes vending. This up here is the vending snapshot. I brought several copies. They're on the table outside, so you can grab a copy on your way out. But this is a really good depiction to kind of figure out which type of vending you may be talking about. Because a common question that we get is, what is required if I want to vend in a particular location? So it is all about location, location, location. There's 3 types of vending, and you can see those depicted on the screen. We've got street vending, which is shown in the black you can see that the vending is in the middle of the street there. So it's all about the location. If you're proposing to vend on the street in that location, that is considered street vending. The next one is the mobile vending, which is in the orange. I'll be talking about a little bit later. And then in the blue is the sidewalk vending. So you can see that if you really want to kind of know which type of license is required, you look at the exact location of where you're proposing to vend at. So examining this snapshot is the best way to determine which license you're going to need. And the rules do change based upon these different vending types. So the key is to kind of start with figuring out which of these 3 apply to what you're trying to accomplish. So a good example of street vending would be an ice cream truck. Ice cream truck, they're driving on the street, they're selling on the street, they periodically are stopping, they're kind of, they've got that sign that comes out that says stop, watch for children, they may have some chimes and some music, but they stay on the street, and they have to remain mobile. Street vending is regulated under City Code Chapter 31, Article 2. So this is what determines all these different requirements. And so that's kind of the best way to kind of describe what a street vendor would be. There are some licensing exemptions for vendors. So I want to make sure to mention that to you because this does come up from time to time. There is what's called an approved block party permit, and there's also a city street special event application. Those are both issued by the Street Transportation Department. So for those particular, if you're involved in that type of permit, that will cover, then you would not necessarily need to get a street permit for your business. Another thing important to note about street vendors is that they cannot be parked or set up for more than 1 hour at a time in an 8-hour period, and they have to move 300 feet every hour. So again, going back to an ice cream truck, they need to be mobile, they need to be able to like pick up and move on and not leave, all their setup behind. And so as far as the street vending requirements go, the license period is between July 1st and June 30th. So that's when we receive a lot of renewals. So coming up, the end of June, a lot of the current street vendors are applying to be renewed for the year. The application process takes roughly 90 days. They provide an application, copy of their identification, demonstrate lawful presence, fingerprints, background check. There's application fees, and then both police and licensed services conduct the review, and ultimately licensed services department provides the recommendation. The reason why it's a 90-day lag time has to do with the background check. So a street vendor is getting their fingerprints submitted, and then the police department is doing that background check to make sure that we've got safe vendors in our community. Other items that may be needed include a county health permit, driver's license, vehicle registration, vehicle insurance, and photos that show that your mirrors and signs are per city code. I'm just going to go back to the vending snapshot again because the next one I'm going to cover is mobile vending. Mobile vending is depicted in the orange color, and it's regulated by City Code Chapter 10, Article 14. So that's what determines all the different regulations. A good mobile vending example would be like a food truck set up in a parking lot. So they're not on the street, like the street vendor. Mobile vending includes selling or giving away of items. So it's not always food. It can also be T-shirts or other types of merchandise. To be mobile vending, they have to be selling outside, not inside. And there are exemptions, as there were some exemptions for street vending. Those exemptions include if a person is visiting multiple properties and they're only selling and giving away items for 30 minutes or less per property, per day, again, 30 minutes or less. But once you get into that, 31 minutes or, 40, then that's when you're going to need to make sure you have a mobile vending license. Another exemption is if a person is exclusively giving away water. So throughout the year, the City of Phoenix does a lot of outreach where they're trying to make sure that everybody is staying hydrated and persons experiencing homelessness perhaps, need that cold bottle of water in order to make it through the day. That's not something that we're out there regulating and we're not enforcing. So giving away water is completely allowed. Other exemptions include a temporary administrative permit, as well as a farmer's market permit or a community garden permit. And lastly, a promotional event permit. So there are some exemptions that if you're involved in any of those types of permits, that would exclude you from needing to have a mobile vending license. Another important thing I want to point out is the zoning. Mobile vending can only be on properties that are zoned A1, A2, or C3. And so if you have any questions, the Planning and Development Department are really helpful in, they have a phone number where you can call and figure out the zoning at a particular address. So you can kind of get that information in advance to make sure that you are qualified for a mobile vendor license at that particular site. And then lastly, you cannot have two mobile vendors in the same space. So all mobile vendors need to be 1,320 feet apart. Mobile vending requirements, they have a different time frame. Their license period is actually from January 1st to December 31st. So coming up in the first week of November, we're going to be starting to start with the renewal process, and we'll have a lot of our current vendors will be coming in to renew their licenses. Again, very similar to mobile, it takes 90 days. You provide the application, identification, all the same items. The additional items that you need to provide with mobile vending that is different from street vending includes a premise diagram, so you're showing exactly where you're going to be set up for this particular site. Permission from the property owner, so we make sure that the property owner is aware and does agree that you could be selling merchandise or food at that location. There's also, in addition to the police department reviewing, planning and development is also reviewing this application to ensure you have the proper zoning, and the neighborhood services department is also conducting a review. They actually physically send an inspector out and they look at the site and make sure that it's adequate. You may also need to provide a county health department permit, and you may need to provide a vehicle registration depending upon your scenario situation. And then lastly, we do also have online resources. You can find online, there's both a copy of the street and mobile vending application. There's this vending snapshot that I provided earlier is also online. There's rules and FAQs, and then the phone number and our dedicated email that you can reach out to our staff with any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leah. So we've done mobile vending and we've done street vending, but we have one more type of vending, which is sidewalk vending. So we have Alan Smith here from the finance department to tell you about sidewalk vending.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Alan Smith. I'm with the revenue enforcement section in the finance department. I'm going to talk a little bit about our sidewalk vending program for the city of Phoenix. So what is Downtown Sidewalk Vending Program? Well, it was established in 2004 by the city of Phoenix, and it allows vendors to vend in the right-of-way and sell food products in the downtown district. The district is created, the boundaries are 7th Street to 7th Avenue, from Fillmore to just north of Jackson. The sites are awarded annually by a bid process, and they require a license agreement with the city of Phoenix. The license agreement grants exclusive rights to sell food products only on the designated vending sites from January 1st through December 31st. I have some important dates to remember. The program is getting ready to start. We're going to have a virtual meeting to discuss to go over more specifics about the program. So if you're a vendor and you wish to learn more about it, you can shoot us an email or give us a call. We're going to have a virtual meeting on November 9th, which is in just a couple of weeks at 10 a.m. You can email our email address to get an invitation to the virtual meeting. You have to register to be a vendor or to bid on a site. So our registration dates start November 9th and they go into November 30th. The bidding starts on December 1st. It's from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the bidding automatically stops at 5 p.m. that day. So the highest bidder receives the site for the following year. We do have a few scheduled blackout dates this year where no vending is allowed. Those dates are listed right here. This is kind of a map of all of our sites. If you notice, we have 19 sites available this year. They're color-coded. The blue are daily sites. The red are primary and the green are secondary, which means we don't allow a vendor to have more than 2 sites. You can win 2 sites, but we don't allow you to have more than 2 sites. And the red is color coded as primary. They're typically, we've noticed that those are some of the better sites available. So we don't allow the vendors to have a monopoly on the downtown vending sites. So you're only allowed 1 primary site and or 1 secondary site if you wish to have 2 sites, or you can have 2 secondary sites, or you may have 2 daily sites. But that's what those color codes mean. And you notice the better sites are down near the baseball stadium. So typically those vendors sell to people going into the baseball or the Suns arena. They sell food, water, snacks, and so forth. The blue sites are typically, those vendors set up during the daytime and sell different things, hot dogs and so forth on a daily basis. Again, that's our website at the top. You can go there to see all of this information. You can actually see we have a list of what the sites bid for in the previous year, so you have an idea of what they typically go for, so you kind of know what you can bid on the site to try to win it. This is also a list of all of our sites. It tells the address, the type of site, and the size. Typically, most of our sites are 5 by 14. We have some 5 by 11s, and so forth. Again, this program is getting ready to start for the next year. So in a couple of weeks, we'll have that meeting. And then if you'd like to register to be a vendor, you have it up until November 30th to register. And then the bidding starts on December 1st. We'll award we'll announce the winners about the second week of December. We'll have you come in and sign an agreement. You have to sign a license agreement with the City of Phoenix, and then you're allowed to start vending January 1st. Again, this is some more information. The phone numbers listed go directly to, that first phone number is mine, so it goes directly to my desk. So if you have any questions, you can definitely give me a call directly. I'll be glad to provide as much information. And then this is our email address, and you can shoot us an email if you have any other questions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Alan. So that covers the vending piece of things. Next, we're going to get into public assembly, those temporary uses like tents. We're going to talk in a few minutes about temporary indoor building uses and that sort of thing. But we're going to start first on that public assembly piece with Eric Williams of the Phoenix Fire Department.
Thank you, Zandon. Good morning. As the Assistant Fire Marshal for Phoenix Fire, it's my duty and the fire department's mission to ensure that the businesses that you represent that are really the backbone of our economy, that bring people down to work, play, eat, and live in downtown, are safe and successful. So to do that, we provide inspections and permitting for those businesses. So I'm going to cover a couple of those today. I won't cover all of them, but I'll cover what will apply to your businesses in general and also during a civic event like this. So the two that I'm going to cover today are assembly permits, both indoor and outdoor, and also tents. So when we get to the assemblies, we kind of have to define what an assembly is and when a permit is required. So for indoor, an assembly is defined as any business that has eating, dining, gathering, for religious, civic, social, it could be private or public, that has an occupant load of greater than 50 or greater. That would be an indoor assembly. An outdoor assembly would be an event that has more than 500 attendees attending, or you fence by temporary fence or barrier more than 50 inside. So an outdoor assembly would be like an extension of premise you heard earlier. Liquor will require a barrier, generally that becomes a fence. So that event, if you're gonna fence more than 50 persons inside, does require an outdoor assembly permit from the fire department. So going back to indoor, it's an annual permit. So if you do own or operate an assembly occupancy in the city of Phoenix, you're required to have an annual assembly permit from the Phoenix Fire Department. It's $150. You'll see there's a $300 permit for a temporary indoor building use. We call them TIBUs. Future presenter here will be talking about that in more detail, but that is a one-time permit. The $150 permit fee is an annual permit for your business. We issue those after we do a fire inspection and all observe our code violations are corrected. If you do own or operate a public assembly in the downtown area right now, either you have or you will be having a fire inspector make contact with you, as we're currently inspecting all assemblies in the downtown area, more in lines with the clean zone footprint at this point. Outdoor permits, we talked about that. For outdoors, generally we will see these, again, liquor extension. If you decide you want to close your parking lot off and have an outdoor festival or event or party, that's where the outdoor permit will come into play. The permit is not annual, it's site specific and it's time specific. So if every month you're going to have an event, that event every single month will require a permit. It is not an annual or continuing permit. That permit does expire when that event you're hosting closes. The permit's $450. Now, I will point out, fire code does say you have to submit it 10 days, and there's a penalty for every day within 10. But as you've heard from all the presenters, some require 4, 6, maybe 12 weeks, 8 weeks. So please be sure that you're picking the most recent due date, and you're not waiting, oh, fire says 10 days, so I'm good. Because for tents, we'll talk about later, you do have to go through zoning, and they need more time than that. So please understand that that is a minimum for fire, but our partner departments have additional requirements. Plans, drawings are required at the time of application. We'll talk about the application in a few minutes. And again, just be mindful, especially for outdoor events, that other departments may have permits. So you may have zoning permits, you may have bleachers, generators, staging. So just because you have a fire permit for the event doesn't mean that you may not have other requirements from the city inside that event. Tent permits, something that we'll see a lot for civic events like this. Tent permits are required based on the size of the tent. So you can have up to an 800 square foot tent with sidewalls, either a panel on one or all sides, just at least one or more sides have a panel. 800 square foot, you're okay. If you're at 801 or greater, you will need a permit for that tent. And if you have no sidewalls, so what some people would call a canopy, you can go up to 1,200 square foot. Now, those two tents are not ones you buy at Costco and you throw in your storeroom and you put up for special events. Those are substantially large tents, take time to put together and are engineered. So generally those will come from tent companies, special event companies. So when working with your vendors, ensure whoever's providing your tent is going through the permit process. The application does require specific documents and engineering, and those contractors have that. But what may apply to most of you is the little 10 by 10 pop-ups. So if you have a farmer's market or a food fair, or some of your vendors are bringing in tents, technically that would require a permit if they exceed those amounts accumulatively. So a 10 by 10 tent is 100 square foot. So if you had side panels or a back panel, you could have up to 8 of them, and then you would need a 20-foot fire break. If you don't have that fire break, technically those tents are permittable. You want to avoid that because the requirements of a permittable tent for wind load, staking, ballasting it's cost prohibitive for these little 10 by 10s. So if you have no sidewalls, every 12, or if you have a sidewall every 8, just have a 20-foot break. You can have a vendor in that gap. Doesn't have to be completely clear. We just can't have a tent. So if there is a fire, the smoke and fire doesn't spread from tent to tent to tent before we can get there. So again, that break will allow you to stay outside of the permitting. If you don't provide it, unfortunately, there will be a permit. We issue again for tents. Once a tent goes up, that permit's good. Once that tent comes down, the permit goes with that tent. If the tent's going to be up for more than 6 months, it has to go through planning and development department because it's considered a permanent structure. It's no longer a temporary tent at that point. There is a $300 fee for the first tent. If you have multiple large tents, it's $150. And again, that 10 days, but be mindful, you have to go through zoning for our application. So there are other departments, so don't wait till the 11th day. Otherwise, you're going to struggle with some other partner departments. Again, talk about that. Temp companies will usually provide these permits as we require to engineer calculations. And again, you may have other permit requirements from other city departments. If you have a generator, heating or cooling, those will have to go through other departments that we'll work with you on. So we talked about the permits. How do you get those permits? You can visit our website at Phoenix.gov/fire/prevention. And on the right, you'll see that permit application link. The applications are there, PDF and alphabetical, so you're going to look for assembly and for tents. You can also call our main office. That number is listed there on the right. And I'll have my business cards out today. You can call, text, or email me, and we'll make sure we get you taken care of. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Next, we're almost there. We just have two more presenters at this point, but we're going to have Mike Malero come up. He's with the Phoenix Planning and Development Department. Going to talk about some of those other temporary, indoor business use or temporary place of assembly, that sort of thing. So, welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Zandon. As he mentioned, my name is, Mike Malero. I'm a project manager, City of Phoenix, Planning and Development. We're going to talk about temporary indoor business use and temporary place of assembly. It is also known as a TBU. So it's a funny name. If you go to the second floor and you ask for a TBU, a lot of people might not know what it is. So please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'll give you some contact information here at the end. But basically, why is a TBU required? Well, it comes down to building safety. When is a TBU required? A TBU is required when there is an indoor event with an occupancy exceeding 49 occupants for buildings that do not have a valid certificate of occupancy or assembly. In addition, buildings with valid C of O for assembly can also apply for a TBU to temporarily increase occupant load if the existing building and fire protection can safely accommodate proposed occupant load. So it's very important that you demonstrate that you meet these safety requirements, and these thresholds are basically what will inform you that a TBU is needed and the permit will be, permit can be issued. There are 4 steps to this permitting process. They're very important and they should be followed in order. The first step, and I would say the most important step, is the zoning approval. If you don't get zoning approval, you won't make it any further. So basically, start with zoning. Once you get that approval, you can move on to the next step, which would be fire prevention. And then after fire prevention, we're going to have commercial building services, where we issue the permit for planning and development, which, let me mention, you will also get a permit from fire as well. And the last step is inspections. So there will be inspections necessary throughout this process as the last step. The packet can be found online, and there are 2 applications within that packet, so please keep that in mind and make note as to which application you are filing. All right, so step 1, as I mentioned before, you can't proceed any further without zoning approval. Zoning staff will determine if the location for the temporary use and related activities are permitted per the zoning ordinance. Like I said, you're not going to go any further if it's not an allowed use within that zoning district. And they're also going to make sure that there is adequate off-street parking. If there is not adequate off-street parking, a temporary use permit may be required, which is a public hearing and could take up to 8 weeks to process. So please get your applications in early and find out if you do in fact need a temporary use permit. We also have the administrative temporary use permit, which was discussed a little bit earlier. That's done administratively, so that process takes about 15 days, but again, I can't stress enough, get your applications in early, because I know a lot of you are going to come in the day before and say, Mike, I need the permit, I want to hold an event, and we're not going to be able to do it because I'm not going to have enough time. So be very, very mindful of timing. Step number 2, fire prevention. So for step 2, again, step 2 and step 3, when we get to step 3, that's going to be, those 2 steps can kind of be interchangeable. They kind of work hand in hand with each other depending on the scope of work. So I know I mentioned to follow these steps accordingly, but what I would recommend is always start with fire prevention, and then shortly thereafter go ahead and submit your commercial plan review so they can run concurrently, and then the 2 departments can discuss your submittals if need be. But for fire prevention, what you're going to need is the completed fire department application, which I mentioned is it's one of 2 within that packet. You're going to definitely need the copy of valid certificate of occupancy. And copy of, well, the copy of planning and zoning permits and the indoor building use permit, that's where I mentioned it's kind of the chicken before the egg type deal. So I am here to help coordinate between those two divisions. And again, depending on the scope of work, you may or may not have those at that time. So definitely reach out so we can assist and help massage the permit through the process. The applications must be submitted 10 business days prior to the event. Again, timing is everything. The fire application can be submitted directly or has to be submitted directly to the fire department at 150 South 12th Street, or it can be done online through their website. All right, step number 3, commercial building services. So this is the planning and development aspect. So eligibility for a TBO, building must have a valid C of O established and must meet the minimum threshold requirements per the IBC. So threshold 1, you will see one note under there. There's supposed to be more. So you will find those on the application, the sections of the IBC that applies. Basically, that is for 50 to 99 occupants. And threshold 2 applies to 100 or more occupants. So you'll definitely want to follow those threshold requirements and make sure that they are met. For the submittal, you're going to need 3 copies of a dimensioned floor plan. A quarter scale is preferred. Must show compliance for required threshold and payment required at the time of submittal. So please be very detailed in your submittals, your occupant loads, because they will be reviewing again for building safety and compliance. Additional permits for generators, bleachers, and stages will be addressed at this step. Fire and zoning approval is required for each event date that exceeds 48 hours. Each TBU permit is good for 48 hours. If the days are staggered, a new TBU permit will be required. And just note that no more than 12 TBU events are allowed per year. Alrighty, temporary stages and bleachers. Again, submit well in advance. Staff needs time to review. There is a email address there where you can reach out to commercial staff directly if you have specific questions regarding to the construction of stages, bleachers, or the process in general. For performance platforms and stages, exempt, not more than 30 inches above adjacent grade. Mobile hydraulic stages, MHS, and mobile trailer stages only require documentation of insurance coverage and proof of inspection within the 24 months. Rigging and generators not part of the MHS system require a permit. Also, keep in mind that this is a 4-step process, so it's kind of that 4 steps over and over: zoning, fire, commercial, and inspections. Again, time is very, very important. Bleachers, permit required for bleachers, tiered seating supported on a dedicated structural system, 2 or more rows high. There is no distinction between prefabricated, mobile, or temporary bleachers. And as for generators, a permit is required for installation. Permit is also required when power is supplied by the existing wiring or from portable or vehicle-mounted generators, and always include size and number of generators. Last but not least is inspections. Inspections and final acceptance are required for both the TBU and the temporary place of assembly. Applicants must call for these inspections. They will give you the approval to proceed, and they inspections must take place prior to the event. So all these steps, I know it seems daunting, but it's not that daunting. And feel free to reach out to OCA, and we can definitely help you through the permitting process. And there's some contact information for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Finally, we're going to talk about a lot of those health requirements coming from Maricopa County. So we have Vaz Hofer here to go through a little presentation.
Hello, my name is Voss Hofer, and I'm with Maricopa County Environmental Services. I am the managing supervisor. I oversee our environmental health plan review, mobile food, special events, and variance programs. So I just want to cover just information associated with permitting at special events. So this is our mission and vision statement. We start our presentations this way, and just to let you know that we're here to partner with our agencies, partner agencies, as well as the public, to ensure that we minimize incidents of illnesses at events such as this. So I'll start off with our food permits at special events. A permit is required when storing, preparing, packaging, or serving food from a booth, vehicle, restaurant, satellite feeding location, and such. So often folks don't realize that food will include things like ice as well as beverages or anything that's intended for human consumption. We do have several exemptions with regards to food permitting. No permit is required for commercial beverage sampling and sales. When you are just pouring shelf-stable drinks like beer or wine into a disposable cup. In addition, no permit is required when you are just opening a can or bottle and handing it over to a customer for these shelf-stable drinks as well. A permit will be required if ice or garnishes or cut fruit or anything of that nature is being added to these shelf-stable drinks. Some more exemptions: if you are only offering commercially individually packaged shelf-stable food items like chips, candy, soda, and such, no permit is required. Also, if you are doing any promotional sampling of these shelf-stable items, no permit is required, but we do encourage you to have proper hand washing and sanitation practices. And lastly, those that are registered with our Arizona State Cottage Food Program and operating under those rules and regulations would also not need a permit from the Maricopa County Environmental Services Department. Okay, so the following are the permits that we normally see at our special events with regards to food. We have our mobile food types 1 through 3, our annual event food establishment, our food catering permit, and our temporary food establishments. I'll be going through each one of these. The mobile food type 1 means a food establishment that dispenses commercially processed, individually packaged foods and or time temperature control for safety beverages. Sampling may also be conducted under this type of permit. This is typically your ice cream trucks, dispensing of pre-made shelf-stable drinks, our freezer trucks that I think some folks may see, like our meat trucks that are out selling fresh frozen meat, and our prepackaged tamales or snow cones, things of that nature. Everything is made in a commercial kitchen under permit, and then they're able to go out and sell under this mobile food type 1, provided it's all packaged and labeled. Then we have our mobile food type 2. This is a food establishment that dispenses food that requires limited handling and preparation. So there's no raw food that can be prepared on our mobile food type 2. This is your hot dogs, your snow cones, kettle corn, coffee, Italian ice, things of that nature. Then we have our mobile food type 3. This is your basic restaurant on wheels. It has a hand sink, 3-compartment sink, and basically they can do your raw menu items. Hamburgers, chicken, they have blenders, they can bake in there. You can see basically your entire kitchen on that truck. And then we have our annual event food establishment permit. This is a food establishment that operates in conjunction with one event that's not more than 120 consecutive days. The annual food establishment permits are issued for 1 year, and they must go through plan review, and they operate from a commercial kitchen. All of the mobile food permits are required to operate from a commissary, and the mobile food type 2, type 3, and the annual all go through a plan review process with the department. So we do ensure that all of the requirements are in place prior to operation. So we do suggest that if you're submitting plans for one of these types of permits, you do it well in advance. We do Right now, we've been having a flow of about 20 to 30 new applications for plan reviews in the program, so we are working diligently to get everyone permitted and approved, but we do review all of your menu processes, and that does take some time, so we encourage, submittal as soon as possible. We have a food catering permit that can also be at special events. The food caterer operates from a brick and mortar, so they get permitted at the fixed food establishment. This is where you offer a prearranged number of meals and or food products that are prepared at the permitted kitchen, and then they're just for immediate service and consumption at the event. So you're allowed to hold and serve foods. You can do your final cooking of your soy proteins, meat and vegetables, and all your advanced preparation needs to take place in that commercial kitchen. We do have additional requirements. All of that can be found on our website as well, or you can contact the department. Also at events, we see often with these especially large events such as the Super Bowl, we see an extension of premise of restaurants. When this takes place, anytime there is an extension of premise where you're maybe setting up a full bar and it's not just pouring beer or wine or shelf-stable drinks into a cup, or just going beyond what would be under an exemption and what your permit allows for, you may be needing to get a temporary food establishment permit. And that could be, for example, sometimes in hotels, they'll set up an additional coffee setup or a bar setup where it goes above and beyond. And so we would evaluate each one, and depending on the nature, we may require an additional temporary food establishment permit. And so if that's the case, we encourage you to speak to your inspector, contact the department. We can confirm whether or not an additional permit is required. And again, you can apply for that, and we can review all the requirements. And lastly, we have our temporary food establishment permit. So this is where maybe you're going above and beyond what the permit allows for. We may have a mobile food truck, like our mobile food type 3, that may want to set up a grill outside of their establishment, in which case, if they're doing something above and beyond what the permit allowed for and what they got approved for, then we want to have them apply for a temporary food establishment permit. We evaluated the permit based on what was submitted for, so if we're going above and beyond, then we're going to need to have an additional permit. So this can be also, sometimes folks will just be at an event and they're maybe just wanting to do kettle corn for that particular event. They apply for a temporary food establishment permit. We do ask that these are applied for at least 7 days in advance, but with the nature of Super Bowl, we do ask that give yourself as much lead time as possible. Again, we're having a lot of events this season post-COVID, so we are diligently trying to plan for all the events that are happening. So as much advance as possible, that would be beneficial for all parties. All of our guidance documents can be found on our website as well as our applications, and I know the contact sheet has all the information on the backside. So for all of the permit exemptions, we have our food catering guidance, our mobile food guidelines, special event coordinator and vendor requirements, and all of our applications. Then getting into the other aspect of special events, which is this comes from our Water and Waste Division. So also at special events, you will see haulers. When we have non-hazardous liquid waste haulers, they are required to be permitted. The vehicles that transport such waste shall be transported and disposed of only in a manner and at a place approved by the department. So these are all permitted. And our portable restroom units, we do permit all of these units. They're for temporary use only. It's a ratio of 1 to 20 for each toilet that's required, and they need to be located within 200 feet of each serviced area, and they cannot be within 25 feet of a food establishment. And the reason we ask that they're not within 25 feet is if there isn't a break or an incident with these, we do not want that waste to come and impact your food establishment, because that would result in potential closure or issues that we don't want to affect your business for that reason. We also permit our drinking water haulers. They are to be constructed and operated to provide potable water only, and they must be maintained sanitary and protected from pollution. So those are our 3 water hauling permits and the application. And again, with these special events, I just want to let you know that just to apply, you'll have the coordinator that will submit a coordinator event information sheet to the department, and they do provide all the vendors on that sheet. So if anyone needs any additional permits or any information, we will work with you to get all the information you need from the county. And I know there's a lot of nuances with permitting, but we work diligently to make sure that we cover what is needed for you and make sure you're in the right permit category. And just know that our permitting is just limited to our making sure it's health and sanitation. We don't cover where you're set up or how you're set up. We'll just make sure that you're following those health and sanitation rules. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Vaz. So that is the end of the presentation. At this time, I'm going to ask all of our presenters to come up to the table.
Hello, good morning. So our question's specific to our property. We're from the Renaissance Downtown Hotel, and in the past, we've been able to close down Adams to Central, from Adams Street to Central to First for block parties. And I guess our question is that something that would be considered over the Super Bowl dates to put an application in for?
So we did not actually address street closures today, so it's a great opportunity to kind of talk about that. It is absolutely something that will be considered. The streets department, the police department are taking a look at those as they're coming in. The reason we didn't address it is because it's not something that we necessarily want to encourage, just because of there's going to be so much traffic and activity downtown that a lot of those street closures, they're going to be difficult to be able to accommodate for the city. But what I would say is put your application in now. So, the team that's looking at those can start looking at, at that one. It's kind of a different situation where you're at because that was always the intent with Adams. But I don't know from a public safety standpoint, what their plans are around that, that area. So that would be my advice, is to get that application in now. I know you guys know how to do that, of course. You do it all the time. So that'd be my recommendation.
Thank you.
What else? We got one over here.
Hey, hi. We are from the Herberger Theater Center across the street. We host outdoor events several times throughout the year and have advertising banners promoting the event and our sponsors. Will these banners require a permit during the period of time?
Yes, so whatever banners you want to use for the event will need a temporary sign permit and will be reviewed by the host committee as well.
So is it $150 per date, or can the whole series be encompassed by one permit?
We charge $150 per application. You can do multiple signs on one application.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Good question.
For certain events like First Fridays that we host out on our plaza, we will occasionally have opportunities for a local vendor to sell merchandise, but it's on our property, it's on our plaza. Do we need to file permits for those single vendors that are just there for like a First Friday evening from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m.?
So, am I on? Okay, yeah. So if, for that particular vendor, they would either need to have a vendor's license and have that agreement with you as the property owner, but also make sure that the zoning is in place, and I'll kind of pass off to Trish. But there are some exemptions that I mentioned previously too. So Trish, do you want to speak about the zoning requirements?
Certainly. So yeah, if you're doing any type of vendors on your property, it would have to be associated with a particular event. You couldn't just have a vendor placed on your property. The zoning that you're in doesn't allow, because as Leah mentioned earlier, it's C3, A1, or A2, and I know you're in DTC. I'm not sure which character area, but so yeah, it would only be allowed to be either associated with a specific event through an ATUP or a use permit, and I think you guys have a use permit for some of your extended days, so we'd probably want to talk that through. But yeah, you just couldn't have mobile vendors on the property.
Sorry, Erica's got the mic. Sorry, it's a little hard to hear.
Okay, so sorry. Patio alcohol sales for passerbys?
Is there any chance that, given the current regulation of purchase and carry alcohol, extends to the sidewalks?
Is this on a,
I think what he's asking last Super Bowl.
Yeah.
oh,
Off property, so it was within a certain zone.
correct.
We haven't heard anything else
Yeah.
about this or something that's happening.
That's correct. That's not happening. In its place is it's going to be at Hance Park. So we're doing a special event liquor license at Hance Park, and it's going to be enclosed in that area. So to my knowledge, I can bounce it to the host committee, but to my knowledge, we're not doing, that's not a proposal to do the walk-in. You're right.
Okay, yeah, because last Super Bowl was pre-COVID, and now post-COVID, the liquor law has actually changed a bit. So if you'll notice, you go to a Mexican restaurant, they say, don't forget your margarita to go. So I didn't know if it extended to anything downtown.
You would have to check with the Department of Liquor License and Control. They do have some situations in which they do issue those licenses. Those are directly with the state and not with the city.
Let us know if anything else comes up, and we're excited for this opportunity, and really hope good luck to everybody, and hope that this works out really well for everybody. Thank you.